this beautiful sunshiny day. I hope you're outside watching it on your phone or something like that and enjoying the sun, because we are now getting into spring. But I am so excited. We've got James Shomar here, who is working right now with MACNY, and I'm going to allow him later on to introduce himself. He's working with MACNY as the Chief Growth Officer. He's also a partner in SmartFast, and so he's got a wealth of knowledge and information for us about entrepreneurships, because that's really what we're all about. So the little commercial for the Y Center is that we help female business owners in Central New York develop smart and successful business strategies. And we offer one-on-one coaching, free online learning, and free virtual networking opportunities, because we are 100% committed to your success. And through this whole pandemic, we have been creating programs that are specific to really helping you as a business owner or an entrepreneur that is really wanting to put this wonderful thing out in the world. We're here to help and guide you. So Barb Stone, business coach with the Y Center, and the name of my business, because I also do something else, is Build Your Path. I work as a leadership development coach, and I work with individuals and teams to be able to put that great thing out here. But it is a privilege to be able to work with the women at the Y Center and really be able to hold them and support them. And with that, I am so thrilled to have James Shomar here, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about, well, vetting your business and getting it out in the world. And we had some really amazing conversation on Monday. So I'm really hoping that you will, as you're listening to James and you've got questions that you'd like to ask of him, please pipe in and put them in the chat box in Facebook, and we'll get them answered, because it's really important to make this interactive. So James, can you tell us a little bit more about you? I don't want to, you just, and how you wound up back here in Central New York, because I think your journey and coming back here and back to the community, because this is what we're doing here with the Y Center, is really supporting the community. And I really think it's so important. So I'm going to let you do yourself justice.
Sure. Thank you, Barb. I really appreciate that. And it's exciting to be here with all of you. Happy to tell you a little bit more of a background, but just so you know, hopefully someone you feel knows what they're talking about with some of this stuff. As Barb mentioned, one of my current roles, I should say, is the Chief Growth Officer for MACNY. My background's not really in manufacturing so much, but what I do there is consult with MACNY members who are launching new ventures, new products, entering new markets, testing new business models, work through growth strategy, and all of that. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of types of companies and problems that they're working with, but all dealing with growth and entrepreneurship, which is really my background. From leaving college, I started my first company right out of school as an engineer in solar technology, actually. A classmate of mine and I patented some solar stuff and raised a few $100,000 to put that together, and that was a fun ride. And then my alma mater, Syracuse University, asked me to be the entrepreneur in residence at the business school for a couple of years, which is actually how I originally got connected with WISE. We were both kind of under the Falcone Center at the time. That was back when Joanne was running the show. And most of my career actually has been as a partner at a venture capital firm called StartFast. Our first fund was very early stage focused, mostly software companies. We made about 50 investments. And that was fun because it was, kind of a little bit of capital that we put in, and then a lot of sweat equity. So it was like founding 5 companies every year. It was a lot of fun. And then as they were successful, or I should say the couple that are successful, because it's a high risk endeavor, we would put more capital into them, kind of like the inside look in doing that. And now should be, knock on wood, doing a first close on our second fund, which will be a $40 million seed fund, seed to Series A stage fund, mostly technology companies and stuff like that. So, I've just spent a lot of my career. Oh, I should mention, I also teach at Lemoyne College in entrepreneurship. So helping some really fun student entrepreneurs there too, which is how I got reconnected through the Y Center as well. But ultimately, a lot of why I kind of do this, and I spend a lot of time kind of trying to pay it forward to entrepreneurs and help whatever I can, is I just believe in that mindset in a community. And as it relates to Central New York, I'm a first generation American. My family landed in upstate New York as immigrants, and this community was extremely welcoming to us. It was a great place to grow up, place I'm really glad to be able to raise my kids now. And at the same time, we face a lot of challenges that Rust Belt cities do, and I'm really passionate about trying to help our community and create better opportunities for our kids. So that really comes through growth and entrepreneurship. So I'm trying to invest in that next generation. So that's why I'm here. I want to help.
And you know what I love? Yeah, that is so cool, because I think, it's kind of funny, James, we didn't talk about it, but I'm also first full generation. So not,
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yes. Well, when we meet again, we'll talk more about that.
That'll be great.
Yeah. So we've got these women who are putting these amazing passions, amazing ideas out in the world. And if you were to be able to give them one advice as they've got this idea, what's the first thing that they should really be thinking about doing?
When they have an idea and they're trying to see if it's, I guess, has some traction. So I think I'll come at this from the standpoint of where I find popular culture tends to anchor people, which, in particularly the past sort of 10 years has largely been influenced by, some of the things that you see out there in media, from Shark Tank being a prime example. Maybe some people watch the hit show Silicon Valley and some of those types of things. And I think while I'm glad that has definitely taken entrepreneurial endeavors kind of out of the outliers of society to being something that's generally more exciting and mainstream and people are supportive of. A lot of that stuff is kind of made for TV. And so there's some differences there. And also the way higher education teaches this is it's all about idea and inspiration and innovation and all these fun buzzwords and stuff. But the truth is really it's more about execution than anything else. It's can you do more than anything. Like when I teach entrepreneurship at Lemoyne, what I love about that class is I tell all my students that I'm not going to do lectures. I'm not going to give tests. I'm not going to do homework assignments. None of that. If you're here for a grade, you're in for the wrong reason. You should drop out. I'm here to teach you how to be an entrepreneur. And I can't teach you how to be an entrepreneur in a classroom. That's like trying to teach someone how to play basketball in a classroom. You'll be no better at shooting free throws by the end of the semester if all I do is talk at you. What you have to do is do it. So I tell them, your goal is to start a business and generate revenue by the end of the semester, and I'm going to coach you through that process in real time. And as topics come up and challenges come up that are relevant to you, I work with you on that. So it's a long way of basically saying that if you have an idea, the only way to really test it is to test it. If you're spending more than an hour between you and a whiteboard, you're generally wasting time at that point because it's all in the abstract. I believe in essentially applying the scientific method to your business idea. You have an idea, that's really just a hypothesis. We don't know whether that's a valuable opportunity for the marketplace yet, whether people will buy it until you test that out. So you have to apply that to vetting whether or not your idea will have traction, as opposed to sort of thinking about it in the abstract.
So when you're thinking, when your students now got this, and I love the idea, the scientific method. Oh my gosh, it's like, is this thing going to work? What, what are, what are some of the roads that they take down to test this thing? And then also, what might be some of the roadblocks that they come up with, and then you help them
Sure.
to uncover that?
So, I'll add an asterisk to this to say, on the one hand, if you look at the spectrum of how you start a company, on the one hand, there's the person who does tons and tons of planning and everything's kind of in the abstract. And the other hand is someone who just says, oh, I'm just going to start it right away. And, they cash out their 401k to start their new restaurant and stuff like that. And I'm not suggesting either of those extremes. What I'm suggesting is actually being really intentional and clever about how you test underlying assumptions about your business very quickly, very cheaply. And from that data, you can now make an assessment about how to go forward. So I'll give you an example to highlight this. So this is a real example. One of my students at Lemoyne, he's an athlete. And the idea he had was, as an athlete, he's trying to eat proper nutrition, as you'd imagine. His body is his instrument for his sport. And that's hard on college campuses because you're running from practice, you're running to class, and frankly, the food they have there is pretty gross. So it's hard to have proper nutrition. So what he really wanted was kind of like, good meals on the go that he could just like pick up at a specific drop place as he's going about. And he started telling me about this, and he's like, okay, so I got to go get a kitchen and hire a chef and build this menu and all this sort of stuff and all this rigmarole to do it. And I said, well, go online and see if you can find a meal subscription plan that meets the basic nutrition criteria that you have. And so we searched around real time in class. We found something called Freshly, which had a lot of good stuff. Maybe you guys have used it before. I said, okay, so find the menu for Freshly, go to all your friends who are athletes, see if you can get them to buy certain meals from it. And then when you have enough, buy the subscription and just drop off the meals and see if people will buy it. That requires virtually nothing. I mean, you could even manage the cash flow to get the cash up front. You don't even need a dime down if you're to do it that way. And you're going to learn a lot. You'll have generated revenue. You'll have figured out if people are willing to buy it, right? Where the drop locations are, what are the meals that are popular, whether or not you can find more scalable solutions out there than a test kitchen or something like that. There's an enormous amount to be learned and vetting out whether this is a real idea. And the other side of it is if people aren't willing to buy, great. Now you know not to waste your time and energy and money getting a kitchen and a chef and all of that other stuff. So that's also good information. Yeah.
How is he, just curious, how is he doing now?
Well, it gets back to execution, right? So the challenge I've had with him is getting him to execute.
Okay.
Gets just to circle back on that point is, sounds like a great idea in theory, but that's all it is a great idea, maybe. It's whether or not he'll actually say, all right, well, let me do that. And so whenever I'm working with an entrepreneur, I often give him a task like that and say, all right, go print out the menu and go see if you can get your friends to buy it and come back to me in a week or two and let's talk about what you found. Because that's the kind of execution and cadence that you need to be on to really get something going. That's what's going to determine whether you're an entrepreneur, or as my friend Sean likes to say, a wantrepreneur.
Tell me more about the execution. I like that word because years ago I read a book about it's you're right, it's all in the execution. So once you end up getting this idea and it looks like people want it, what's it like now to really execute the whole idea?
I mean, so I'll to highlight this point, if you look at it really analytically, 90% of all companies that get investor funding, seed funding in the venture world fail. 90% who convince someone to give them money. So it's a high failure rate to start companies, generally speaking. So that's not to dissuade people from doing that by any stretch. That's what I do. But it's to say, okay, how do I play Moneyball with those statistics? How do I overcome that failure rate by being intelligent on how I kind of play this game? And that's why I suggest this sort of scientific method approach, because you can figure out whether something's going to fail very quickly, very cheaply, and then use that information to find something that's working. So if you've got 3 different ideas, start testing them. See the ones that aren't working, throw them away. The ones that are working better than you expected, double down on them. And that's sort of how you find your way into a successful opportunity, is that growth just starts to build upon itself. So he might start with one drop location with this Freshly thing. He might expand to a couple. And then when he grows out of that, he's like, all right, I can't just do Freshly anymore. I'm going to have to find a more scalable option to give them the food and expand on my menu and change my pricing. And how do I expand from Lemoyne? Maybe I want to hop over to university, or maybe I want to go national, or, so each time he's kind of, the expansion is a smaller problem to be solved. And you know what I mean? So that's kind of that process of going about it, is those micro experiments build upon themselves.
I love that. And I love the micro experiments. I love go back to the scientific method. But one of the things is, how do you see and how do you work with entrepreneurs is to get into the mode of understanding that it's okay to fail, and you're going to learn from it, and you're going to move on for it? Because a lot of people say, I've got to try this. I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket, and it's got to work. It's got to work. And without really being able to see the broader picture, that maybe there's a different way of putting this thing out in the world. How do you help them with that failure?
This is something I learned the hard way, in that, my first company, which didn't really work out the way I'd hoped. We got some patents, and we shelved it, and it wasn't the massive commercial success I was hoping for. But I sunk 3.5 years of my life into it.
Yeah.
3.5 years of not going without income, passing up opportunity for jobs, and all that kind of stuff. That's a hard thing to swallow, truthfully, at the end of it. And frankly, I should have pivoted in a matter of a month or two, not 3.5 years. And the reason that aside from lack of experience and frankly poor mentorship, which again circles back to why I do this, there's a lot of well-meaning people who give really bad advice, and that led me down a path to being this sort of, I got to be like Steve Jobs and hard-headed and just not listen to what the world is telling me. And that's not at all what you should be doing. You have to create distance between yourself and your business. You cannot tie your self-worth to any one particular business idea. It's such a dangerous thing to do, because that will happen. 90% failure rate. That doesn't mean that you're not a successful person at all. In fact, I bet you and I did this before. I had some friends who were very successful, like centimillionaire types. And when you look at their resume, a lot of times what it looks like is failure, 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 boom, big success.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like, I'm not trying to paint some rosy picture of, anybody can do it and all that. So, there's realities and circumstances and a lot of complexities and stuff like that. And I don't want to oversimplify it. But to make the point, it's to say that that's just the way the world works, is there is a lot of that. And so the failure. So the way you overcome that is by detaching yourself from the value and the outcome of any one particular idea, looking for objective data and outcomes from the market, whether customers will buy. And when things aren't working, be very quick to throw them away, because you're just going to waste time, and focus on the things that are working. So that goes for ideas generally, but it also goes within specific ideas within specific ideas. So for example, my student with the Freshly idea, he might find that it doesn't work at all marketing through Facebook. right? But it works really well if I can get the university to send out an email blast, or vice
Mm.
versa, right? So that works within an idea, or also works on the idea in general. He might just find, no matter what I'm trying, I can't get anybody to buy this thing. Maybe I should move on to something else. So you have to let that data guide you. And that requires you to be very self-aware and very objective. Your goal is to look for that type of insight, that result,
You
not
know,
tie your self-worth to the result.
yeah, you talked about earlier about intention. So these are, what is your intention in putting it out there? And now it's also that self-awareness of what's really going on here, because one of the things and you also stated about focusing on what's working. So many times I think that there's so much, like as you were saying about putting things out to Facebook, I got to do this and I'm supposed to be doing these posts and that post. But it's like, it might not be for you, and being self-aware.
Mhm.
So what would you end up saying is, and you mentioned something about mindset. What would you end up saying for somebody to help them to disconnect from really holding on to that thing that they wanted? And it's okay that it didn't work. And now let's pivot, let's shift, and being aware and creating this mindset of openness. What would you, it's a hard thing to grab hold of.
Mhm.
What would you, how would you, what piece of advice could you give people to really being open to that?
I think one that highlights the importance of having good mentor and peer relationships,
Mm,
that you can be honest about these things, and that can be honest with each other and candid with each other on feedback and advice. I'd still practice that all the time right now, um, even as is. So, because it's hard when you're working in the weeds to do what I
mhm.
call working on the business. Create that distance to try and look at things really objectively when you are working through that day to day. And so it's helpful to have peers and mentors that can provide some of that support. But unfortunately, like most things in life, it takes a lot of practice to get really good at that.
Yeah.
And the flip side is hopefully, if you're hearing this and agree with it, you can start practicing that in smaller ways right away. And get, you don't have to get hit in the face 10 different times with 10 different ideas that all failed to start building this. It can start with those micro things. I have this idea, I'm going to run a Facebook ad and I'm going to see how it works. And that's one instance where you've practiced trying to be objective and you keep that in your mind. You can try that again with all of those other little things, constantly looking for data and ways to double down on that. This is often referred to as growth hacking. That's the mentality you'll find out there, or design thinking is another sort of buzzword around that. But practice, being mindful of it. I wish I could give more concrete advice, but that seems to be applicable to how do you get good at anything in life? you know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I just hung up the phone with a client, and it was like we just started taking. I could tell she was like, oh, so tight about wanting to put her thing out in the world, and it's like, well, she wants it, she's got it, but it's also being able to take a step back and take a look at a different perspective of how you can do that and really learn from it. From Is there a different way of doing the same thing? It's like with this particular individual with the eating, the nutrition
Mhm.
for his being an athlete. I mean, is there a different way, a different perspective of communicating and getting things out from there as
Uh,
far as my
I'm I'm not sure I understand the question, to be honest with
okay, I guess I just we're just I'm just riffing. I'm
you.
just riffing here.
That's okay. I mean, I can talk about um, I mean, I just hopefully you're gathering that I'm generally a pretty transparent person. But I think that that's really important, for an entrepreneur. Self awareness not a trait that most people think about as associating with an entrepreneur, but in my experience is highly correlated with successful
Mm,
entrepreneurs.
mm,
Highly correlated. People
mm.
don't think about that because, instead we want to show what's on LinkedIn, which is a bunch of humble bragging and not reality. Behind the scenes, you want to find someone who is very coachable and kind of looking, for how do you grow? Because like here's the other sort of hidden secret that people don't think about. Your business can only grow as fast as you can learn. Simple fact. So you have to be willing to learn at an accelerated pace in order to see your business actually take off. And learning is a practice in self-awareness and looking for objective information and feedback to the extent that you can find it. So it's an extremely important skill set. Extremely important skill set.
You know,
Perhaps the most important skill set.
is that you never stop learning, because
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's like you never stop developing. And it's like sometimes I think, okay, I've arrived. And it's like, but no, there's so much more to learn and so much more to do and so much more to create.
Yeah. Well, this is why you see so many successful entrepreneurs who didn't go to college or who were successful with zero relevance to their college degree.
Yeah.
You learn this stuff, learn this skill set, and you are building your team around you. Like if you're building some sophisticated, product that requires a lot of engineers, you build those folks in your team who need that skill set. But to build the company, how important is that? You might have a certain set of knowledge that you need to know. It's these sorts of skill sets, which unfortunately are not taught in higher education very much, that are important. And now I'm not trying to bash college. I have 2 different degrees, but like it is to say that like, in terms of access, shall we say, to an entrepreneurial career path, it's these kinds of skills that you need to learn and learn by doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, One of the things that came to me, James, when we were talking before, was as you are being in the in MACNY now, in
Mhm.
Manufacturing Association of Central New York, and trying to work with different companies to really create that entrepreneur, that's that mindset, that's that learning
Mhm.
piece, that's that self-awareness of that you're always learning about what you can create. And it took me back to when I ended up, uh, when I was interviewing with Xerox after I finished my MBA. And it's funny how you talk about the MBA, and it's like I thought that when I got my MBA, I thought I knew it all. I knew nothing. I
Yeah.
knew nothing. But I had the opportunity to interview with Xerox, and the person that I was interviewing with he was trying to create this entrepreneurship mindset within the company, that we are all always creating and we need to be able to add that value to the
Mhm.
company. And it's like, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing as a
Yeah.
um, chief growth leader for MACNY?
I mean, that was a big reason why I, took the opportunity to with in something that's a little bit more of a job than it's been typical for me was, again, I care about our community and I care about creating opportunity for our kids. And the members of MACNY are a lot of the largest employers in the area. They're sort of been the staple of the business community for, in some cases, a century. Um, so I said, if I want to have an impact, then if I can create a more entrepreneurial and growth oriented culture among this cohort, this community of companies, that changes everything. If that's the case, that they're creating more business and growing, the employees feel empowered and skilled to do that, and maybe they're building spin-offs. I mean, that's what you see in communities that are more entrepreneurial. We're trying to figure out like what's the key to that. A lot of it's just mindset. There's a culture to want to do that. And so that was what excited me, was if I can start to have impact and create that. That can change our economy, change our community. And right now everyone's living in a world of, taxes are too high and competition in China and whatever. Well, that's because we're competing in a stagnant marketplace on margins. If you're constantly with a growth mindset looking for innovation and new things, new markets to create, to go after, new products to build, new companies to go after, and are in a constant state of flux, you don't have that problem as much.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what creates the new and exciting jobs that make our kids want to stay around here, quite frankly. And maybe even, more of our neighbors who frankly don't have the same sorts of career access that frankly, I've had and been lucky and fortunate to have in my life. So that was kind of why I did that. It all speaks to culture. If there's people around you doing it, there's people around you trying to help. Again, I'm a big believer in mentorship and looking for peers to bounce those ideas off of and work with. That has a profound impact.
One of the things, James, you've mentioned several times is about mentorship, or somebody who's like a coach or a guider, somebody that's going to support you. What do you think are some of the good qualities in a mentor or a coach? And also, let's start there, because then I've got another question on that, because you've mentioned that a couple of times.
I think in many ways you're looking for someone who has already kind of blazed a similar path to what you're trying to go on. The challenges I often see where there's a mismatch of mentors is that you're trying to do something that is so out of step with their experience, and where the mentor and mentee are proceeding without that self-awareness. Especially, you run into challenges, because someone who is a restaurateur mentoring someone who is trying to create a new mobile technology, like, they can understand some stuff about business generally, but if they try to just simply overlay the same mindset and skill set to that, it's actually going to give bad advice, and vice versa, mind you. So I think you're trying to look for someone who's kind of been through that, but also there's a lot of characteristics, generally. I, again, believe in a pay it forward, give first mindset without expectation of return. That's the kind of person that you're looking for. Someone who just wants to give and has no expectation of getting anything in return. You need that. That's otherwise it's not usually a healthy relationship and not going to work out in the long run. I think those are kind of the most important characteristics, but you can add in things that might be obvious, like network and so forth as well. But those are some of the less obvious things.
And one of the things we talk about within the Wise Center with our clients is to being able to surround themselves with people that can help them. So maybe a coach, it may be a mentor, but then also who else can support them in being able to, that they can tap into when they get issues or problems, if they've always got that. We call it our bail, it's our bail list, but we also can talk about it being their like mini board of directors, being able to support them on their journey.
Just the way I kind of find mentors and peers and stuff like that, I sort of have a couple buckets you can think about it. There's a core set of people that I'm usually really close with, that I have a lot of respect for generally, and our career paths are aligned enough that anything I'm kind of looking at is enough within their wheelhouse to get really heart-to-heart type of feedback on a regular basis, as I need to. It's important to have those kind of core people. But then there's sort of the broader network of people that I have that I'll ask when I have specific questions related to their area. So was looking at a company recently, and I thought that there was a lot of opportunity in an e-commerce drop shipping type of model. And frankly, most of my background is in B2B companies and technology companies. And that's something I had, I had some peripheral experience with, but it wasn't like I could consider myself an expert in by any stretch, even just the mechanics of it. So I just reached out for his sort of insight and support and was like, okay, you know, if this was your opportunity, what would you do?
Mm.
And all of that sort of stuff. So I kind of have those people that I've just built out in my network over time to lean on, which is again why I believe in this sort of culture of growth and entrepreneurship being so valuable, because that's how you meet those people. Everyone in my network, I've met through something aligned with that, you know, an event, whatever, you know, it's super important.
But I also think for the person that's being coached or mentored, it really ends up being able to have that growth mindset that they can learn, and they've got to be in that constant mode. Is there any other specific qualities that might really make it a viable and a valuable relationship when you're paired with someone?
For characteristics of the mentor or the mentee?
Mentee, mentee.
Coachability is a term, you know, and I don't mean that to create a hierarchy. You know, I prefer to tear down hierarchies when it comes to a community. You know, that's what it is. But it's the sense of saying that um, you are specifically open to and looking for feedback.
Mm.
You are pattern matching. You talked to 5 people and you heard the same thing 4 times, something to look into. You're looking for those types of patterns, right? Ability to execute is also something, you know, if I'm going to spend my time working with someone, I oftentimes give them a task that's going to help them. But the only way I'm going to invest more time, even if I'm just paying it forward as a mentor, is if they're going to come back and say, hey, this is what I found. Can you help me again? Because otherwise, I'm not interested in having the same conversation over and over again. That's usually when you know that there's a problem. If I have the same conversation more than twice, there's a big problem. And it's very obvious when that's happening. You know, so that's the kind of characteristics I look for in a mentee, shall we say.
Yeah, because it's like you've got to want to learn, and you've got to want to be a sponge. And it's like, taking that experience and being able to execute on it and move forward with it.
Yeah, there's so many external factors to success and things that we can't control. But when it comes to, you know, how do you hedge your bets and focus on the things you can control? Well, these are them.
Mm.
You know, your ability to learn and ability to execute to the extent possible that's what's within your control. Oh, sorry, we got some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. So we have a client here that says, how does a small business owner find a mentor?
Great question. Well, you know, I'll let you give the pitch for how the Y Center can be supportive in that. The other pitch I'll make is if you so one of the various initiatives I'm working on is called More Good Jobs. My friend Martin Babinick wrote a book that's behind me that's all about entrepreneurial communities, and we've started an online community on an app called Mighty Networks. That's kind of where we hosted it, and we're that's an experiment for ourselves to see if we can create a platform specifically for that, where you can say, hey, I'm having this problem, and someone can answer, and you can do vice versa with that. And we've got, I don't know, about 100 people on it so far across the world, actually. And some of which are peers and some of which are kind of potential mentors and whatever. So that's a place that you can try to find and engage people. I find putting myself out there generally and trying to meet people to be very valuable. This is pre-COVID, so I'm just going to give that for a second, and then hopefully post-COVID. But like my now partner, Chuck Storman at StartFast, he was originally a mentor of mine. He was on the advisory board for my first company, and I met him at a famous Entrepreneur Series event 10 something years ago, more than that. So that's how that sort of, you know, formed over time, is you find those people. Now during COVID is a little bit more challenging because we don't have in-person events. So understood. This is more spearfishing instead of casting nets. So while you can decide how much you want to post and engage with a platform like a LinkedIn, um, it's a great place to try and find mutual connections. You're all more than welcome to send me a connection and whatever, and everybody else on Wise and stuff like that, I imagine as well. And if you find someone out there, you just ask, and the worst thing that they're going to say is no. And then you say, okay, I'll ask for the next person. I had that happen to me a month ago. It happens. So try and be creative a little bit that way, and attending more of these things and asking, I guess, just be relentlessly asking.
There's a comment here. We wrote in there, if you're interested in joining Wise Circle in more good jobs on Mighty Networks, just email the Wise Center and we'll get you connected on that, because that's really the way it needs to happen. It's all about the connections. It's all about meeting people. It's all about the relationships you develop and how you can work together. It's not only just about one person, but it goes back and forth. So I love, actually, during the COVID times, I've been able to really do a lot of networking via Zoom, networking meetings, and then hook up with people afterwards, meet people online. And I've actually, because of Zoom, only one person can talk at a time. I've gotten to know more people. So it can still happen.
And again, looking at it opportunistically, which is, how I try to look at things as an entrepreneur, including COVID. It was like, okay, you either view this as the worst thing ever, or you try and view it as an opportunity. And viewing things as an opportunity when things are virtual, I've made more connections with people outside of my region because of this. Because what's the difference? Like, you're a few miles away from me, but you could be on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And that was one thing. It was actually kind of cool thing how I met some people through More Good Jobs was other folks who are kind of interested in helping their communities. I just sort of started a meetup for that. And I met one guy who's in the UK, another woman in Missouri, and another guy in Eugene, Oregon. And we all got on the same Zoom call. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I never would have met you otherwise. Were it not for this weird time that we're living in and the ability to connect on the internet. But it was kind of cool what a sense of community we had at such a distance. So take advantage of that, I guess. You might, if someone truly is trying to pay it forward, you might find another person who's built a business like yours in California, and who knows, maybe they're open to talking to you. I've done that.
Yes, and that's part of the reason the Wise Center is here. We're here because we offer the one-to-one coaching, counseling, and also helping guide people throughout the process. And also, one of the things is really bringing in what you need for your business. And we're not the end all. Your bail team is not the end all. It's like, as you are talking about this, James, really networking and being able to find people that have got similar things, and how you can create those relationships and find the right people to help you.
I wanna add an asterisk, if you don't mind. To say, because this is something I experienced especially early on in my entrepreneurial journey, if you will, was I found resource centers and mentors out there, and they're very helpful, but at the same time, it's important as an entrepreneur not to get a false sense of security or a false sense of progress simply because you're engaging with mentors. I did that a lot, wasted a lot of time being like, oh yeah, I'm working my business. I just met with my mentor. It's like, great, but that's not progress on your business. Those two are not the same thing. You're meeting with a mentor and finding a resource center so you can make progress on your business. That is not an equivalency. And there's a tendency a lot of times as entrepreneurs to kind of want that self-assurance in doing that sort of thing. And unfortunately, you cannot rest easy. The reason I don't give homework assignments in my class at Lemoyne, and I told this to my students specifically, is specifically because it's not realistic. No one's grading your paper as an entrepreneur. The consequences of whether you are successful or fail are felt solely by you. So it requires that self-motivation and accountability to make that happen. That's also a hard skill set. Anyway,
just
I wanted to make that point.
great. No, thank you. You know, and what that ties to for me is what you were saying about being learning, because you're getting this from the mentor. You're being able to see some of the things you need to do, but you need to get out there, learn. You need to get out. You talked about execution and you talked about self-awareness. You can have it all given to you on a plate, but unless you really dive into it, it's really not going to go anywhere. And you've got to be that self-starter.
Yeah, and I appreciate that is a difficult thing to learn and habit to build. It's very difficult to build that habit, because that's what it is. It's like we're talking about human behavior here. That's a hard thing to change and manage and kind of manipulate in that way. So I don't want to just sweep that under the rug. That's not an easy thing to do. But again, pushing yourself, be hungry and motivated, the more you can try to practice that, as you would like working out or something.
Yeah.
The more that becomes a real driving force for making progress. And one of the practices that I use is a weekly update email. Even if I'm not going to send it to anybody, I create a weekly update email with, here are the things like I did that made progress. Here are the things that didn't work out. And if you have mentors, I'll send it to them and say, here are the things I need help with. It's like a weekly check-in cadence that forces you to be accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm going to look at the week. I either made progress or I didn't.
Yeah.
And why? And I should examine that either way, so I can do more of the things that helped me make progress and less of the things that didn't. And so that's just a little tool that I use.
That's a great piece of advice, because it's like we really need to be held. It's almost like, to me, I'm thinking like, whether you've got a mentor or you've got whomever, you've got to be accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
Creating that habit. So we're going to wind up here, James. So I just want to say thank you for doing this. And I just, there's some things I put down here: scientific method, hypotheses, test all those things that you want to put out in the world, execution. We just talked a little bit about human behavior, and again, those habits. And then I got the self-awareness, I've got the mindset, and the constant learning about life and about what's going on, and about really putting it out there, that we're never done. Oh my gosh, we're never done.
Nope.
Any other last piece, James, that you'd like to bring to the table here?
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say is back to that cultural piece. I'm doing this to try and pay it forward to a generation of entrepreneurs. But the expectation is that all of you will also want to do the same and pay it forward to the generation of entrepreneurs after you. And that doesn't mean wait until you're successful and you're on Shark Tank. That means as soon as you're taking one step forward and have made progress, there's somebody else still at the step behind you who's going to want to know, how did you get to that one step ahead of where I am? And that's where mentorship plays a role. And so I don't want all of you to wait until, rich and famous or whatever your goal is. Like, you should be looking for those opportunities to pay it forward as well. And that also has been beneficial. You pay it forward with no expectation of return.
Yeah.
But shockingly, you get return eventually in the long run anyway. It just weird how the universe works that way. But I guess that would be my kind of closing statement is I hope that all of you will do the same, because that's how we're going to build that culture and that opportunity in our community.
Great. James, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is great, because I made a new connection, and James and I are going to connect afterwards. But also, I just wanted to, as a plug for the Y Center, you don't have to go it alone. Reach out to us, get somebody to coach you, to guide you through your process as you're trying to vet out the idea that you want to put out in the world. And also, as James talked about, more good jobs, paying it forward, the network, putting it out there. Please reach out to the Y Center and we'll get you into it so that you can get connected. And with that, again, James, thank you so much. And we will be talking soon.
Absolutely. Go enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.